Hey everyone, my name's Nate Boot. I'm a developer advocate for OpenSearch, and I'm here today to host our community meeting for Tuesday, December 6th. Thanks for joining up. We've got a starting attendance of 26 people. That's fantastic. Thanks for coming. Start off with an announcement here. Once a quarter, I think we add a link to our website to get some feedback on what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and all of that. So that is in the upper right-hand corner of opensearch.org. Please do visit and provide us with some, yep, thanks, Chris. Click on the links. If you care to provide us feedback, it's very valuable information to us. As we are very data-driven here, we don't like to make arbitrary changes. And so if we have some even anecdote pointing us towards something that might benefit us all, that is where our community here comes in, and you can really help guide our progress.
If I may,
yeah, please.
Aparna, if you'd like to say anything at this time as well, please go ahead.
Yeah, Aparna Sundar here, part of the OpenSearch team. I'm the researcher here. Hi, Nate. Community, please, follow the link that Chris has here. Like Nate was mentioning, once a quarter, we do love to get our user feedback here. We would also love to talk to you if you have anything to share with us. If you do, go ahead and sign up with your email. We would love to contact you, get your feedback on any concerns or issues that you have, or very specific topics. And so this month, this quarter, we're getting your contact, any information that you want to provide us. Happy to take that in, and look out for these quarterly survey links. We will reach out with new community feedback, some targeted to experiences, some targeted to features, and we'll do this every quarter, and we will make sure we announce that. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nate.
You bet. Wonderful. So I don't know how long that link will remain on the website, but I have a feeling it'll still be up there for a while. So if you can't do it today, at your nearest convenience, we would be humbly in your debt. 2 months, apparently. I'm being told that 2 months is how long it'll be up there. All right. So what are we doing today, everyone? Apparently we're talking about migration. We have some guests here that are going to talk about our migration team and its charter, and we're going to have a discussion about the 3 points list here. If no one has any questions for the good of the order, I'm happy to turn it over to our presenters, and they can get started sharing what they have with us. Are the triplet of you ready?
I'm ready. I think I saw Chris and Michaela. They're on the call, so they'll hop in when they're ready.
Fantastic. Feel free to just take over my screen share whenever you're ready. And
all right, we'll do it in a minute. Thank you,
Alrighty.
Nate.
You bet. When I see that share go up, I'll take my mug off the camera, stop hogging all the limelight, if that's what you call it.
Yeah, so let me go ahead. I'll pull this up here. And before I actually go through these slides, first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. I'll tell you, during this session, I encourage you to speak up. Feel free to interrupt me along the way if you have any questions. And if you do, and you go to the chat, I may not see it, so somebody just interrupt me and say there's a question posted in the chat. I actually wanted to start, and I'm going to stop sharing just for a second. I wanted to start with just asking you all, and just feel free to post this in the chat window. I want to know people's experience level, or if they have any experience whatsoever with upgrades and migrations. Just trying to get a sense of the audience. Has anybody done this? Is this a pain point for them? And if you could just post a Y for yes or N for no. And even if you haven't done it, just post no. I just want to see who the audience is in the chat window.
Not personally here, but I've worked with a few other dev relations people who have software products that are based on OpenSearch. And when you have those companion products that have it as a backend, that migration also becomes a little bit more difficult. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. And I suspect that pathing will be the most confusing thing, because usually, there's a very well described path where you jump from version X to version Y to version Z, and throughout that path, all of the indices will be compatible. And I've yet to see anything etched into stone like that. So that's my experience. Speaking of interrupting on the air.
All right. Well, I'm actually surprised at the number of people who said yes. So if you have any feedback, we appreciate it. I will go ahead and begin. Let me start sharing my screen over here. Okay, so this is a little bit of the agenda today. So what I'm going to do is talk about who we are, who's involved in this. So basically, we have a new or fairly new migrations and upgrades team. So this is a team in OpenSearch that is dedicated to migrations and upgrades. I'll explain a little bit of who we are, the differences between, or what we consider the differences between migrations and upgrades. This is an important distinction for us. Finally, talk a little bit of the of some of our work initiatives. So we haven't been here for too long, but within that time, we've come up with a few initiatives to make our upgrade and migration paths much simpler. And so we'll talk about a testing framework. We're really interested in your feedback there and where we're going. And then we'll give you some links to how you can participate and influence our roadmap going forward. Okay, so this is a list of the people who are dedicated to migrations and upgrades. I would consider this the core migrations and upgrades team. So on the left, you have a list of the engineers. I've worked with most of these people for at least a year, and many of us have a lot of industry experience, well over 10 years for a lot of the people on this list. And of course, since joining OpenSearch, this is the product team, the documentation team, user research, and a manager that I am now getting familiar with. We're all working together towards a common goal. But I also want to point out that we have broader support from the OpenSearch project. There's a lot of people who step in with various roles who have helped, and it's actually been a very exciting time for me. To be clear, I've only been here for about 2 months now. So new to OpenSearch as a community advocate. However, I used it extensively in my previous role as a head of engineering, and I'm excited to contribute here to this project. And notice at the very bottom of this, and you could post, if somebody could post this link in the chat, we opened up a new repo. So you'll see OpenSearch project, OpenSearch migrations. And within that repo, you'll see all sorts of conversations, or you should see all sorts of conversations and issues related to migrations and upgrades. A few of them we're going to be going over today. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have pain points or have experienced, especially with the number of people who have done upgrades or migrations. You've experienced the problems with it, and so we think, or there are plenty who have supported us enough to consider this a big enough problem that we need a dedicated team. So we're here to solve Elasticsearch and OpenSearch upgrade and migration issues. The problem is these upgrades and migrations typically require in-depth knowledge, and these are the types of risks that we have identified in those upgrades. Security is a huge issue. Performance degradation, unavailability, inconsistency, loss of data, and operational load. The ones I've been hearing, I've done a lot of interviews today. I've been hearing a lot about operational load, security being a forcing function for updating to the latest version. So these are, hopefully, we could make it easier to raise the security bar by just providing some tooling, and both internal to an OpenSearch cluster and then external tooling such as the test tool we'll describe today. So we're interested in developing with the community, and just in general making upgrades and migrations more reliable. And thinking about our customer a bit, this is who we consider our customer: the open source community, distributors, consumers, maintainers of the OpenSearch project, and finally self-managed, whatever service they may be using. They're all our customers, so we try to look for feedback from whatever user is using this service or any part of this project. Okay, so in our time here, what we have determined is, okay, I said there's an issue with migrate. There's two definitions that I want to get clear: a migration and an upgrade. So an upgrade to us is moving from one version of Elasticsearch or OpenSearch to another without necessarily changing any of the underlying hardware or hosting, versus migration, where we think of that as you're moving data from one place to another, typically from, say, a self-service, self-managed solution to a managed solution. They're both problems that we want to address. In the short term, with our testing tool, we are focused on the upgrade problem, and we do think that solving the upgrade problem will eventually enhance or change the migration problem. And the developing work streams that we have are this assessment and validation test tool, which Chris and Michaela are gonna go into some details there. Chris and Michaela are two engineers on this team, as you saw in the previous slide. And then some of the other work streams, or two other work streams, are support for multi-version upgrades, and that's both in terms of tools and intrinsic changes to the OpenSearch code base, and of course, developing our documentation knowledge base. I want to point out that this assessment and validation test tool, the reason that we think that this is a priority is not only for us to understand the lay of the land, but to make sure we have some ground truth around migration and upgrades. Based on our research, talking to a lot of customers, we find that there's a lot of institutional knowledge, but that there's no canonical documentation or one-stop shop for people to get this information. We want this tool to be a self-documenting tool. We want to be able to use this tool for good engineering practices, meaning this will be hooked into CI/CD. This will be, as a developer, you'll be able to run it. And what we're going to do is we're going to validate the assertions made by various community members as far as problems they're facing with upgrades and migrations. And you'll see that we validate those in the form of a test. And of course, we're going to be able to, it's very important to be able to say, with an assessment tool, okay, I am confident in performing an upgrade. And of course, Chris is going to go into more details about that. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Chris, so you could talk about this a bit.
Howdy, y'all. Yeah, my name is Chris Halma. Just a brief intro about myself. I've been an Amazonian for about a little over 10 years now. I've done a bunch of backend development. I did some really sort of high leverage development, dev tooling type stuff, and AWS Builder tools, crypto security, mix everything. At least that's everything. So I'm sort of taking a look at sort of the framework that we're going to be setting up for doing assessments and validations. I think one of the key ideas is sort of encapsulating community understanding of the pain points around upgrades. And I guess also sort of just generally expectations about what should happen in both a good way and a bad way when you go from one version of a cluster to another version of a cluster. And so we really want to sort of capture those expectations with tests. Like, so think TDD, you basically have some sort of understanding of what the behavior should be, and you can use that to make a flywheel to do a bunch of stuff. So we want to basically make sure that, oops, I think we just progressed to a different slide than we should be on.
Yeah, I'll move it back right now.
So So we want to basically, in our testing, once we sort of, I guess, collected these expectations that, for instance, let's say that between one version of the core engine to another version of the core engine, like a field will change between a string and a geopoint, something like that. We want to basically be able to assert that that is true with real tests using real upgrades, using real clusters. And we also want to sort of focus on higher fidelity testing than kind of what exists in existing backwards compatibility tests, if you're familiar with those. So more complex configuration, metadata, want to do plugins, and so on. And once we sort of captured that and are able to sort of assert that these things we expect are true, we'll be able to do useful things with it. One is we'll be able to provide assessments. So let's say that you have a cluster and you want to basically have some sort of understanding of what you may encounter if you go to some new version of OpenSearch or plugins or something like that. So you can run a tool and we'll be able to apply this understanding of pain points and expectations to your cluster and sort of say, okay, well, your setup looks kind of like this. You're moving to this version. We think you'll run into these sorts of issues. And then I'll give you sort of a report of, look at these sorts of things. We also want to be able, or we'll also be able to provide some validation, which is, let's say that you have a candidate cluster, you've already upgraded, and you want to get an idea of, is it ready to take production traffic? So we'll be able to run a tool, you'll be able to run a tool that will give you some idea of whether it's ready or not. And that could just be a combination of, we check to see if it has the same number of documents for a particular index as the source cluster that you migrated from. Maybe you did like a in parallel type thing, right? Or maybe it could be that we check to see all of the fields that may have morphed because you went from an old version to a new version. Did you actually check those? And give you some report of like, hey, check this out. And once again, we're kind of doing this in the same way a customer would, or I guess a user would actually perform an upgrade. So doing a real snapshot restore, for example, and actually doing it that way. Another idea is that, so we have this default set of tests that are going to continuously assert that the things we expect to be true are true in sort of the core library of the testing framework. But we want to basically make this extensible and usable by anyone to do any sort of testing. So the idea is that you can use our framework and you can specify your own sort of cluster setup and then load your own custom data into the framework and run your own custom tests to get a report similar to what we do for the default expectations that we have set up. Another sort of key aspect of this is that we will have some, so this is all sort of focused on, I guess, unblocking customers to help themselves, providing them assessments and validations. But we have sort of longer range plans for what's coming next. So I think Brian mentioned we'd love to be able to provide a solution for, let's say you want to go from Elastic 6 to OpenSearch 2. Right now you have to do multiple hops. Well, wouldn't it be great if you could do a single hop? So how do we test that? And the answer is, well, we need a framework to test it, and that's what this is. So it's also sort of facilitating development of future work, kind of like multi-version, what we call multi-version upgrades. There is a proposal for the sort of user experience, and I guess it sort of gives you a little bit of the roadmap too, an intuition of sort of the roadmap of what this looks like. It's linked on the slide. Chris, if you could post, great, thank you. So that's kind of the what this is. Happy to answer questions if people have any. Otherwise, we can sort of move on to Michaela, who's focusing on sort of the knowledge base, the expectations, and I guess what she calls sort of the evil data set, which is sort of the core of, the testing, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll move
Can
on
we
to
go to the next
Michaela.
slide? Hi, I'm Michaela Thompson. I'm a software engineer on the team with Chris and Brian, and I've been at Amazon for about 2 years and a couple different startups before that. But I'm on month 2 at OpenSearch and enjoying being here so far. So I'm going to talk about a specific tool within this testing framework that Chris just described that we'd particularly like your input and feedback on. So the Evil Dataset is the name we're using for this collection that we'd like to build of data and queries that demonstrate behavior changes between versions and kind of probe edge cases that we think there's a chance, these upgrades will hit. This data set will be used within the testing framework as part of this assessment and validation loop, but it can also be used on its own for you to test upgrades on your own clusters or to understand like how you need to change tooling on your end to work with your target upgrade version. We'd like to expand it over time to cover not just the core of OpenSearch, but also common plugins and configuration.
Hey, Michaela, we lost you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having a headphone issue. Okay, so this first link under how you can contribute goes to the GitHub issue that we're kind of using for the highlight for this that.
You're cutting out, Michaela.
Yeah, I think she realizes it. She's fixing her headset.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We could hear you.
Loud and clear.
So this first link is the high-level design issue that we're using to kind of lay out the plan for this data set and how we're building it. The second issue is a prototype of kind of that proposed format in code. And so you can, look at that and play with that as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the design and the proof of concept for sure, at how this tool would be most useful for you, what you envision using it for. But one of the other ways that we're going to need your help is contributing to the data set itself. As we saw at the beginning, most of you have done upgrades before and you know what broke or what API changed or where there was a new data type added. And you can help us communicate that to others and prepare others for upgrades by adding to this data set and to this knowledge base. For now, the proof of concept PR is probably the best guide on how to add something to this data set. But once the design is nailed down and we have a path forward, we'll make sure that there's a clear contribution guide for adding your own findings.
All right. And I didn't, thank you. I didn't look, but those links were actually posted in the chat.
Yeah, Mr. Fredane is just on top of it today. He's got the copy pasta skill.
All right, nice. Okay, so just a few more links to paste. So as we've kind of alluded to, we would love contributions, some feedback in some way. And really, we think of this as you'll have some influence in the direction of migrations and upgrades, and hopefully that's for the better. So there are 3 ways that I guess you can provide input or influence the direction here. The first one is this forum. And if you've never been to this forum before, there's a lot of discussions here. There's 2 tags in particular we would like you to use: upgrade or migration. If you use those tags, our intention is to look at these, and I want to make sure that you understand every single upgrade issue that we face. We may not have the bandwidth to tackle, but we do want to look at these and distill these into actual issues that are actionable, right? So as we're going to be dedicating somebody to look at these 2 tags, and from there create actionable GitHub issues. And there'll be a tag that where these issues are actually referenced. Perhaps it's reported by customer, but once we create these issues, we'll reference them within the actual discussion if it's relevant. So the forum's the first, the issues are the second way to contribute. And of course, if there's a bug related to migrations and upgrades, go ahead and open up an issue. If it's more like I'm having a problem with an upgrade or a migration and I need some help, I would use the forum for that. It sounds like there may be a question. No?
Did I hear you say that the tool, the thing that will check against a list of assumptions, that's something that people will be able to pull and run on their own in case they don't want to have to interact with anyone?
Yes, that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
So the idea is it's basically a standalone tool you pull down onto your laptop, whatever, and you can run it off your laptop or your development environment, whatever that happens to be, and either run the sort of the default tests that we have for all the things that we currently know about and are testing for, or leverage the framework to add some custom tests, custom data, and run it against your own sort of bespoke setup.
Nice. And then just to reiterate the point, you said you're also looking for contributions to the evil data set?
Very much so. Again, we're new to this. We obviously know of many issues that are common across upgrades, but we don't know of, more than a fraction of what this community knows of.
Awesome. So that's you have my sympathy in trying to get feedback on that kind of thing, because I know when I usually freak out is when we go up a major version, because we very strongly stick to semantic versioning. So when that number on the far left goes up one, something is about to break for some people. And so yes, that I can imagine some data coming from that. When you see that version upgrade, there's probably a good candidate of data to add to that set. I have one more question before I stop hogging up all your time here. I'd hate to get too meta on everyone, but will there be any kind of semantic versioning for your tool? Will it ever break in between versions, or
between versions of what?
Of your assessment tool?
That's a good question. I mean, the place I would think it would break would be like, so if you make I guess like, yes, it is possible that things could change between versions. I think certainly for the time being, think of it as a prototype. It will probably give some guidance around when you should start thinking about it as a prototype and when like data formats will changes, So for instance, we have a configuration file, right? And like maybe we change the configuration file format in the short term and eventually it'll stabilize. In terms of whether we're doing SimVer for the tool, doesn't seem unreasonable, but we haven't gotten there that far yet. We're just trying to write code now. So
right.
But definitely something to keep in mind.
Awesome. Well, I'll do my best to see if I can submit some little poison pills for you to try that out.
All right.
The spicier, the better.
Thank you, Nate. And so there you go, forums, issues, and the final one that was you had Aparna speak in the beginning of the call. And so you send an email if you're interested in being interviewed, just for the sake of improving these products that we're creating, or the migration and upgrade experience overall. I think that's about it. So
we have some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
I guess
I was just curious.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, actually, I did step in front of someone. Go ahead, Sam. Sam's question is, are there plans to support in-place migration of Lucene versions?
It's something we're currently exploring. The question is, what does that look like? And what are sort of the boundaries of that? It's under active investigation, is what I would say.
Yeah, maybe I can give some context to clarify why I'm asking this. So say for example, if customer have like say 2 petabytes of data, Today, the guidance is like go and like re-ingest. But that is very performance intensive. And sometimes, if like the only difference is maybe a minor difference in metadata, if you could have done like an in-place modification, so on the Lucene side, you can save, hours, maybe days of intensive computation time. This is the context to the question.
Yeah, so one of our developers, Greg, I think he might be on here, might be able to give you better directions, but I know we're sort of looking into sort of a variety of options there, whether it's supporting multiple versions of Lucene within the same OpenSearch engine. And there's also sort of like being able to do backwards reading as well. I think we're looking at too.
Kartik or Greg,
Cool. Thank
if
you.
if there's anything you want to add there.
Nothing beyond what Chris has already said. We're definitely actively investigating it. We know we have Sam, you're not the only person who's asked this. We've gotten multiple requests to sort of make that better. And we're looking into what we can do to make that easier for customers.
Yeah, that one's not a surprise to me, even in my short time here. All right.
Thank you, folks.
So-
I have
Answer.
I have
James-
a
James Hunter?
question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
Hi. Yeah, so for Elasticsearch versions 7.12 and later, there's index incompatibility with OpenSearch. So the data must be re-indexed. I might be mistaken there, but I believe that's correct. What's the best way to approach this pretty much?
I think the lack of a quick answer probably tells you we haven't we don't have a good solution to that right now.
Yeah,
I think
it's a situation that's near and dear to me, James, because it's at the point of our fork, it was pretty much an equivalent of 7.1 of Elasticsearch, and at that point, you could just kind of point OpenSearch at your old data, and then it would just go be up and running beautifully and wonderfully. But once you go past that version, I think there's certain migrations that require a re-indexing, and unfortunately, that situation does happen sometime. I mean, unfortunately, people can assess all they want and make certain assumptions, but if the assessment finds that the index formats or some kind of metadata isn't compatible, I think sometimes we might just end up at that brick wall where we have to re-index things. And ideally, I mean, I suggest filing an issue in their GitHub repo saying, hey, help me figure this out. Put the onus on people smarter than me, that's for sure.
Cool. Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, well, we understand that is a problem. That's why we're here. That's what we can say right now. Unfortunately, it's not the best answer, but express those concerns to us so we could prioritize them.
So I wanted to follow up on that just quickly. One of the things that was mentioned a moment ago, I'll post a couple tickets for one that Kartik opened and one that I opened about supporting in read-only and read-write fashion, different versions of Lucene. For supporting different versions of indices from way back versions of Open or Elasticsearch, that will require significant bit of refactoring once that actually happens, and we'll probably move hopefully to more of a plugin and modular sort of approach to how we store indices. And at that point, that would also open the door to be able to take in an Elastic 8, Elastic 9 index, and someone could provide a plugin that was able to manage that and kind of slip it in instead of, say, Lucene 11 or whatever, and OpenSearch 4, et cetera. That's way down the road, but that's where I'd kind of like to see this stuff go.
I'd like to get feedback from some of the folks on here who've had to handle tons, or who work at companies that have handled tons of migrations, and especially in multi-tenant setups. We have Aran Dengate from Instacluster on the call, and we have Andre from Ivan, and Sam from Oracle. Maybe you guys can feedback on the assessment tool and how it might impact the work that you guys are doing on these much more complex upgrades.
I don't know who is going to go first, but I can try. So we do see that a lot, in particular for for customers who are trying to move, say, from 6.8 to to adopt OpenSearch, and many times I think one of the issues that I specifically saw was like really minor difference. Like right now, the guideline is like, okay, go upgrade, re-index, then upgrade again, re-index. So it's like maybe 2 or 3 times of a re-index, but for the most part, the differences are like really minor, which is why I brought the question, right? Like the data difference doesn't always really make sense to re-index like 3 times, especially when we're talking about, like it could be, you're not just dealing with the data that is currently on the cluster. You also have to think about the snapshots that the custom, the users have, and so on. Yeah, I guess that was one of the main thing I've seen so far. The other part, I guess, was yeah, I guess that I guess was the main thing. The other part was the upgrade. So we've been doing so I know, like, say Amazon is doing upgrade of clusters in a certain way, and one thing I guess that I was really curious about, like from past in my career, when I was trying to upgrade like Elasticsearch 5 to a rolling upgrade, that was like really difficult and didn't end well for my team. So that was also something that I guess is kind of interesting. I guess there is like official kind of rolling upgrade, but maybe we should give it a shot again, see if it's better now.
Cool. Andre or Aaron, do you guys want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, sure, guys. Can I go? It's Andre.
Yeah.
For me, yeah. So I guess for us, things are a bit easier in the sense that we don't have too much of Elastic history on the platform. I guess we used version 7, and that was the minimal one we started. So migrates were pretty much straightforward. It's only, I believe it's only a matter of how much data customers have. However, on the forums, I see like a lot the complications are coming from people who use XPack features, basically it's data types which are not supported by OpenSearch, and have a lot of requests like that. Unfortunately, it's not easy to replicate this functionality, and this is probably for many people is a showstopper with respect to migration at this point of time. There's no way unless you just give up some features and their index.
Yes.
That would be it, I guess. I believe people get used to this style of save migration, and you have to index support and then have to index at some point. It's annoying, it's difficult. Some people just stuck for a long time and will never migrate to anything else, unfortunately. I do have experiences from previous companies who just get terabytes of data and say, okay, we'll never migrate to anything else because it's super expensive.
I missed the very last part of what you said. Terabytes of data.
I work for a couple of companies where we have this very large deployments and like terabytes of data. Now it's not very large deployment, but essentially, whenever you do migration, someone has to pay for infrastructure, right? You have to spin up a cluster. It's a lot of nodes, and you have to basically migrate and reindex everything. And negotiating with customers could be very, very difficult, unless you're Amazon, right? You're in a good position to do that. But this could be I mean, with in-place migrations, I guess Cassandra does something like that when you just upgrade the stables, new versions. With in-place Lucene, like you just upgrade the data from, if it's possible, that would be very, 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 very nice feature to have. But I've never seen it actually in the wild. It's more like a theoretical one for me. I guess this is it. Way helpful or not? I don't know.
Do you have a speculation as to why you've never seen it in the wild? Is it too risky?
Not really. I think it's just too low level for people to do, and you have to automate it. As far as I know, it's like manual work at this point. You have to do some tricks manually to update this index files, listing segment files by doing some procedure. I've never seen it been done.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Is there other questions? Feedback? Any comments?
I guess in Instacluster, 2 pain points that we see a lot are one, trying to work out what XPack features the customer is using, because a lot of customers are not aware that they're using them. Another pain point is a lot of customers don't have the capability to dual write, and so doing a no downtime migration for them is quite tricky. And depending on versions and stuff, you could potentially do it by adding nodes on OpenSearch, like to the existing cluster, but that's not great for rollback, since if anything goes wrong, it could potentially cause problems with the original cluster as well.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at the XPack comment. I'm not surprised by it. I've learned this recently, how many people, they just don't realize what plugins they're using or features. I don't know a good solution to that. The dual write, we've heard of that issue before too. So I think that those are both good call outs. Does anyone have any comments or responses to either of those?
I feel like one of the, go ahead.
I was just going to note on the point of, users not necessarily use it or knowing what they're using. One of the things we've discussed, in a very preliminary way, is that part of the assessment tool could be sort of introspecting the cluster and, not just relying on sort of the user's report, but trying to figure out the ground truth ourselves so that we can, make that report for them more accurate.
Sounds promising.
I also can I just shim in with one more issue, guys? I guess it would be very interesting.
Go for it.
It's again Andrew from me. So in Elastic 8, apparently they've done some changes which significantly reduce the requirements for resources, for basically the recommendations, how many shards and gigabyte of memory you have to have. This has been changed for Elastic. And now we have confusion in the community what should be recommendations for OpenSearch deployments. And as far as I know, we didn't do anything related to that. And migrating from clusters on version 8 might take this into account, that the sizes when it's related to that is not already matching the the requirements or expectations which we do have right now in OpenSearch. This is pretty new. I saw it a couple of times on the forum. People just ask us, do the same. Just reduce all this resource usages for OpenSearch. It's easy to say than to do. But this is essentially would be, I guess, at some point would be very tricky moment, like tricky part of the migration process to actually match these requirements, not to get the cluster which is actually dead from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hey, by the way, everyone, David, I'm a developer advocate for OpenSearch at Amazon. Andrew, it's funny you mentioned that as well, because one of the things I was just thinking is right now we're, similar enough to Elasticsearch that, people are comparing them apples to apples, but I'm going to be curious to see how that's going to look a couple major versions from now, because I'm beginning to wonder if reindexing, at least between, Elasticsearch and OpenSearch, is going to be the only option, as we start to diverge in our code bases. And also, maybe potentially, hopefully we'll be under at some point and people will be looking at us as the, more cost-effective option, depending, but curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on that.
I mean, this is just take it with a grain of salt, considering I've been looking at OpenSearch stuff for about a month and a half now, but in the month and a half, that seemed reasonable, right? That inevitably there's going to be a divergence if we're not trying to maintain active parity. And the idea that we'd be able to maintain parity when, maybe they're trying to break parity, like at some point we're better off just basically offering a better value proposition, right? And going our own way, which I think we are sort of focusing on with some of our initiatives, right? So
for whatever it's worth, during like the discussions of the release of 2.0 in the first place, right? Divergence was something that was discussed, at least within the community here, not infrequently, right? This was the Markov point of where divergence started. It realistically needs to become more of a situation where you continue to harp on the fact that this is a fork. This is no longer the same code base. We're not trying to stay on parity. And as much as some people won't like that, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, would like to believe that we're doing what we think is right for the community, doing things a little bit different, but it's because that's what people are asking for. So it's cool.
Yeah, this is Greg Smith from SAS. I mean, my comment on that is your community is the OpenSearch community. You guys forked. Some of us have gone this way. Some of us are in both camps. That's all for people who are going to decide. Longer term, my expectation, and I think most people's expectation, is the divergence will be so great that it doesn't make any sense. They're different products. Now, if Amazon wants to always make it easy for people to move away from Elasticsearch into OpenSearch, that's a business decision that's Amazon's welcome to do. I think most of us in the community, unless we're in both camps and therefore need that exit ramp or that opportunity, that's how you guys want to conduct your business. Is how you guys want to conduct your business. That's not really a core functionality that I think necessarily. Well, speaking for myself. As a community member, I'm currently using OpenSearch, and that's what I'm using. So worrying about Elasticsearch 9, Elasticsearch 10, that's not something that I would hope a lot of resources are being devoted to if it's distracting from improving OpenSearch 1, 2, 3, the versions we're using now. Obviously Amazon can allocate their resources where they want to, but in terms of from a project standpoint, worrying about, another version down the line of Elasticsearch isn't my issue, isn't my concern. So
that's fair, and I think that's where the community's going. Like, we're just participants in the community like anybody else, so we put ideas out there, but yeah, I don't think anyone here is looking to keep in lock, so that we have that parity. I think it's good for us to evolve into our own way, similar to how Grafana forked from Kibana and went their own way, and now it's very different. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Are there any, we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other questions or comments? And I think, Bill, you had something. Okay. I'll take that as a no.
Sorry, I was looking for my unmute. Michaela said exactly what I was going to say, so I didn't have anything left.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill. Okay. Well, you know where to find us. Like I said, we're happy to be here. We're excited to hear from you. If you, post there. If you find you you're not getting what you need, please do feel free to contact me directly on this, anything migration or upgrade related. And that's it. Thanks a lot for giving us the time, Chris. Thank you for organizing this. And thanks everyone for participating.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, guys. We appreciate it. We're going to take just a minute, open up the floor if anyone has any other questions unrelated to necessarily migrations, thoughts, comments, testimonials. So thankful that we were able to have that discussion, because I feel like it's on a lot of people's minds right now.
Yeah, and thank you all for presenting, and thank you to everyone that attended, gave the feedback. All of it was incredibly helpful. And we look forward to continuing this discussion with you.
Cool. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you all, and we'll catch you all in the next meeting.
Cheers.